citizens calling, complaining because they couldn't find it.
I'd like to call to order this CRA meeting for August the 22nd, Thursday here at 5:30 Council Chambers. With that, could we please stand and have our Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Chair Nathan Blackwell.
Here.
Vice Chair Lynette Matheny. Here. Member Dave Askew.
Here.
Member Chuck Cooper.
Here.
Member Keith Trace.
Here.
Member Joel Davis.
Who? Oh, here.
Member Dwight Lody.
Here.
Hope you've had time to review the minutes from our May 16 meeting. If you have, do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Tracy and Board Member Cooper. All in favor, say aye.
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 And it so carries. Brings us to old business. Item number A.
Good evening, Andre Anderson, Planning and Zoning Director. I'd like to give you a quick update on the Makinson Building, and that's what we'll be calling it moving forward, to brand it under the original name that it was previously, as opposed to calling it 918 New York Avenue. So the update is that since purchase, we have made some roof repairs. So the roof is now secured. We did not put a new roof on the building, but instead repaired it with materials that we had and used city staff to make the repairs. It will be secure and functional for at least anywhere from 2 to 3 years, which will give us more than sufficient time to initiate the sale of the property. So that's a savings to the CRA and to the city. We also removed the vines from the building. Those are the creeping fig that was overtaking the building. We have since removed that, pressure washed the building. You also noticed that we have also replaced the awning that's on the building so that it does not look as derelict as it was previously. We also removed the back porch that was attached to the building on the rear. That back porch was in fact encroaching on what is private property, and so we had to remove that to ensure that we were not in violation of encroaching on private property. To date, and it's in your agenda packet, you will see a list of expenditures to date that we have incurred since the purchase for the Phase 2, Phase 1 environmental assessment, the roof repair itself, the awning, the vine removal as indicated, the pressure washing, the porch demolition, as well as some electrical work that was needed. So to date, we have spent with the purchase of about $403,000, and we also spent for the survey of the property another $1,800. There are some pending expenditures that we propose to incur, which include the mold remediation, and we were not able to start that until the roof was secure because it was still leaking and would create mold after we did the remediation. So we made sure to get the roof sealed first, then we'll proceed with the mold remediation. It's approximately about $41,000. We added another 10% contingency because we don't have the quotes just yet, but that's what we anticipate would be the cost for the mold remediation. And then in addition to that, we are proposing to consider purchase of the vacant lot, which is the parking lot that's facing on 10th Street. And this is an item later for discussion as one of the new items to discuss further. And the survey, the appraisal for that property is about $77,000, and I'll discuss that a little further once we get to that item. And then also for the appraisal of that lot as well. So for another $124,000 for a total of about $29,000 is what anticipate spending at this point. At that point, we'll then make a decision what would be the appropriate price for sale of that property once we put it out for bid. Any questions?
Any questions?
The next item is the parking lot that I mentioned on 10th Street. It's a vacant lot behind the Mickelson building, and we are proposing, you had instructed us to look at the purchase, and we are proposing to purchase that property. It is approximately 2,500 square feet. It was, the last sale on that property was in November of 2018, and the current owner purchased it at a price of $52,000. They initially listed it around $70,000, but then the price went up and they listed it around $90,000. We did an appraisal that came out to $77,000. That's roughly $29.96 per square foot. When calculated out, it's about $1.3 million per acre. This site is, would be a useful lot to the entire project in order to make it more usable as far as a secondary entrance into the rear facility, if they wanted to separate the two uses and have the back being a separate facility from the front portion of the building. Again, that's the decision. We're looking for direction from the board as to whether or not we should pursue purchase of this property.
What's the pleasure or discussion of the council regarding this, Mr. Cooper? Councilman
Thank you.
Cooper?
It appears to me, thought process, that they're using cars, trucks that are already parked there during the day now that are 50%, sometimes full in there, that we don't have enough parking on New York Avenue or on 10th Street. They are parking there. Why do we want to go and spend $77,000 when we've already got, they're parking now, then the owner is not raising Cain? Tell me what the good is to buy it for.
Sure. So the current activity that occurs at our property is unauthorized at this point, and rightly so. You mentioned that they have not complained. However, it is still an unauthorized use of the property. It's not permitted by the owner, and in essence, it's trespassing. And it's not owned by us, so we could not authorize folks to park on that property anyway, because it's not our property to provide that ability. The reason that we are interested in purchasing that property, as I said, is to allow for the use of that property as a secondary location and access to the rear of the building. There's two buildings, essentially. The green building, which is the newer portion that's attached on the rear, it would have its own separate entrance, so it'd be a viable use for something separate and detached from the front portion of the building that faces New York.
Okay, it seems, okay, if we do that, we buy it, that's a good idea. Then we push out 7, 8, 9 parking cars, vehicles, whatever, during the day, some until the evening. Where are they gonna park? We're getting stuffed during the middle of the day. I can tell you, I go by there most of the time. But if you buy it and we use it for our own use, for whatever, cantina, whatever you want to use it, get it rented or whatever, then you're just pushing it back out onto 10th Street, 13th Street, New York Avenue, excuse me, that we don't have enough parking now.
Okay.
Now, unless you're going to put it over in, we've got the another parking lot that we took back from on Massachusetts Avenue, but that's not grassed. Unless we're going to mark it for handicap and do everything else, make it legal. You want to do everything legal there. So that's I just can't see to go spend $77,000 and push these people off where they've already been parking for years.
Understood.
Thank you, sir.
Any other comment? Mr. Loading?
My thought process on it is, if you look at it, what it's worth per square foot, if you look at the appraisal and everything, maybe per square foot that it's worth that, but it's a very small parcel that no one's going to be able to do anything with it. If anything, it's an asset to that building. So in saying that, besides that, the value's not there. I just don't think the value's there.
And the board has the option and ability to identify or indicate any price you wish us to pursue. So the appraisal came at 77, but doesn't mean that that's what you
Because,
offer.
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying.
Because that square footage, if you look at the square footage, all the other parcels that it was compared to, they all have buildings on them. So that's what that property is worth, and this building, and blah, blah, blah. But those lots are all larger than or an existing building already on them. That's my point there. I think it's, maybe the appraisal says it's worth that much money, but I think, who else is going to come walking down the road or around down the street and say, hey, I'm going to give you 77,000 or 52,000 or whatever for it? And it doesn't have a.
Member Matheny?
Thank you. So I was going to go down the same path as Mr. Loading, where let's say somebody comes and says, I'm going to buy this piece and I'm going to develop it. Is it even developable with all of the access and ingress, egress you have to provide to all the surrounding? I don't even think it's a developable piece. Am I mistaken?
You are partially correct.
Okay.
It is developable, but there is going to be some severe restrictions on what can be developed on that property, because in this current configuration, according to discussions I had with our building official, they cannot block existing access to their properties. So the property that's adjacent on the east currently has access into that parking lot area, and so in developing that property, they would have to create an opportunity for access through that site. So it would be very restricted in what could actually occur.
Yeah, I had the same feelings when I looked at the appraisal, and I'm not an appraiser, but I was like, why are they comparing them to building, parcels that have buildings on them? I don't even know that you could develop that. I don't think they got a true, apples and apples comparison. And I know you told me that they purchased it for 52, something like that.
That's correct.
So, I can see the value of having this piece of property to the building that we own, to have an outdoor seating area or do something, I always like outdoor seating areas when I look to go to places and look cute little courtyards and things like that. I can see the value. I think 77's too high. I don't know what's a good number. I just don't know, at the end of the day, if someone could actually develop that into something. I just don't really know.
Councilman Trace?
Yeah, I had the same concerns about the valuation, the $1.3 million an acre valuation. What did the city just buy that 2-acre piece for, where the cannery is? Wasn't that
$200 grand.
$200,000?
But that's not an appropriate comparison because it came from the school board.
Yeah, agreed, but it was still
Yeah.
out there in the fair market.
Yeah.
But then my second concern with it is, do we have a plan for the parcel, other than it's available, let's buy it? I just want to see a plan for it instead of just allows us access to a building where we have additional access.
Well, the plan is to submit an RFP for responses as to what will occur. So we, as a city, don't have a specific plan at this point. You directed us to send out an RFP and get ideas of how they would develop the entire property.
Okay.
Any other comments? Mr. Askew?
I'm looking at the subject aerial maps on page 9. You will notice that the
what you're talking about on the land on that, it doesn't butt up against that building. There's actually land in between the building. So if the building official looked at that, I would assume that you can't block it, but you do have an access out. So you would be buying the land as whole. You could build, if I'm correct, it's a 0 lot line in the downtown area? Okay.
But
And there's no parking requirement?
There's no parking requirement for the downtown, but. Oh, I'm done, sorry.
that's okay. But don't you have the same setback off the Makeson building in the rear? So the parcel, when you look at that same map, the north property line runs basically, or apparently, right up against the Makeson building. That building has a rear entrance that'll have the same problem where they're gonna have to set back off of that to not block that entrance also, right?
That's kind of part of why the
Right,
dimensions
so
that you
just
set.
because they're not losing the one on the east side, what Andre didn't mention to start with is they do lose the part on the north side.
Can I interject here? We own that building, you can block that door,
Right,
sell it
I mean,
as
if we
is.
own,
But it-
yeah.
But it doesn't, it makes it to somebody else no value.
All right. Well, you can always add the door back when that person purchases the land, but if we're gonna sell it and you wanna purchase the land, or we don't get that land, you can always take that door out. But there's no
Yeah,
porch
but
there now,
Why would we
so.
publicly say we're gonna do that and increase the value of something we're gonna compete to buy?
It depends on if we purchase the land or we don't purchase the land.
Right, but right now, we just told them, if we don't buy it, we'll block that door and not block off your future buyer from somebody else.
Yeah, I'm just throwing out options. You can do it or you don't have to do it. I mean, you would do it if you didn't own that land over there. You wouldn't want the liability of stepping onto somebody else's property.
I don't know.
It's flexible.
Well, at this point, I don't hear any recommendations for moving forward with that purchase, am I correct?
Okay,
Well,
Make an option.
I'd say there's, move forward with it, but not at 77,000.
Right.
I mean,
can we get a number?
Bought it for 52.
they bought it for 52.
Mr. Manzares?
Yeah, I did talk to the agent for it. They had the property listed at
90 something.
89.5. They were gonna list it at 89.5. He didn't know, the representative didn't know the appraisal amount, so he said we would sell it for the appraisal amount. That's where it is. I would just caution you about putting too much into that 52,000 purchase price. That was purchased at a certificate at a mortgage foreclosure,
All right.
which typically is not a real, in fact, appraisers typically don't use mortgage foreclosure auctions as pricing when they're doing comps. And so I wouldn't necessarily assume that because 52 was what they bought it, but that's really what the property's worth or not. So, but it is what they have in it, and obviously, so, but I think obviously one of the reasons staff brought this back is because this board had expressed some interest in acquiring the property. So if you want to move forward with that, then just give the staff a number. We'll go back to the representative of the owner and say, here's what they're willing to pay. You want to sell it or not?
Member Matheny?
Thank you. So along the same lines of what Mr. Davis just said is, why do they have our appraisal?
Well,
Because we don't have to share that from our ethics training that we get in here. Like, you don't have to share that when you're in active negotiation. So why did we give them the appraisal?
Well, one of the reasons why we gave them the appraisal is because they were looking at a $90,000 purchase price. And we did talk about, use the issue that we're a governmental entity, we can't pay more than the appraised value of it. We did not do the two appraisals that under the public records law, if the city or the agency wanted to buy a piece of property, it would have to, and keep those appraisals exempt from public records disclosure, we'd have to actually do two appraisals, and then you'd have to, as the agency, agree that you're gonna buy the property for the appraised value or an average of the appraised value. That's kind of how the quirkiness about how the public records law works on that. So we did not take that path to do that. Mrs. Sturgeon and I talked about it. You know, we said, let's get an appraisal on the property. We got an appraisal on the property, and we did share the amount with the representative, so that we could tell them your $90,000 price is way out of line.
When did they buy this?
In November of 2018.
18. Okay. And do you know how much they pay in taxes every year?
I did
Actually,
not.
there's taxes due on it.
Yeah, oh, that's true, because it said there was a certificate was sold.
Yeah, it's on, it's the
it on
tax
there?
assessments and the
Yeah,
appraisal.
there's back taxes on it.
Yeah, 2018, the tax amount was $250. 2017 was $200.
I would support making an offer to purchase for what they purchased it for in 2018.
Are you making that a motion?
Yes.
So for 52.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Do we have any further discussion?
Yes, I have one question.
Yes.
And it comes back down to the, we did an environmental study on the Makinson building, and the way I understood it was that there may have been a gas tank or may not have been a gas tank under the property that we now are speaking of. So does that mean there's going to be a whole nother environmental study and we're going to pay for that all over again? And because now on that property instead of the Makinson property?
We're all looking at you, Dan.
I have to go look back at that study. I thought that that study identified that tank, but didn't as a possible issue, but I think that that tank went back to the 20s or the 30s, and I don't think there was ever any final confirmation that there is actually a tank there.
But we did the environmental study because being it's the city, to protect ourselves. So my question is that something's going to be just like, okay, we've got to do it again for this piece of property after we purchase it, so that if we ever sell that property along with the Makinson property, that we are protecting the city on this? So I guess that's my question. Are we just open, if we purchase this, are we just opening another can of worms on this as far as environmental?
Well, again, and as we did with the agreement when they bought 918, this board approved it with a due diligence period that included an inspection and an environmental study. So we're not suggesting that you simply, any offer, if the seller were to accept the offer, that we're simply going to enter into a contract that's going to close next week. We obviously would do a due diligence period. We still have to look at the title issues on it, because the title is, anytime there's a mortgage foreclosure involved, the title gets a little muddy. So we'd have to work through that before you ever closed on it. And if the board would want to do an environmental study, we certainly could have one done. And then
Mr. Davis?
Speaking of that, have they filed suit to quiet title on that?
No, they actually got a certificate of title issued.
I'm sorry?
They got a certificate of title issued by the court.
Yeah, but they got 4 years, or they're going to have to pay to clear that title, or wait 4 years.
Well, if they want to get insurance on their own for it, yes.
Well, if the city wants to buy it without potential,
Well, we're not going to buy it without them being able to give us title insurance.
so they'll have to file suit, though, to quiet title at that
Either
point.
that or a title company might be able to look at the mortgage foreclosure and decide whether they want to insure it or not.
There is a company that does that, but it's about $2,000, $19.50 to do it.
Yeah, I don't say it's inexpensive, but that would be a cost of the seller, that the seller would have to.
As long as we're clear on that, yeah.
Mr. Askew?
I guess just for the flexibility part of it, if we did purchase the land there, we don't have to sell it with the Makinson building, or vice versa. We can sell it with the Makinson building. If it doesn't go with the building, that's a parking lot. So Mr. Cooper brought up that we need more parking in the downtown, so purchasing this property, it just seems like it would overall benefit us in the long run, parking lot, or we sell it with the other one. Hopefully don't lose anything.
And to be clear, if that's where the board wants to move forward with this, I think that's an appropriate way to move forward. If you look at the appraisal, the one thing I would question about the appraisal valued the property based on a municipal assemblage. So they basically valued the property not as an independently property, they valued it as an accessory use to the existing city structure that's there. That's really where the only truth. So on that theory, the appraisal obviously might be a little higher because there's greater value to the neighbors than anybody else. So John Smith off the street's not going to come in and pay that amount because, as we've already talked about, there's a lot more development issues or something. So when you look at the appraisal, they valued it as the ultimate use being a municipal assemblage was the language. There isn't anything wrong with that, but I do think that that arguably makes the value a little higher than it really is.
Any other discussion? We have a motion from member Matheny to purchase the property at the taxed sale price,
52,000.
$52,000. We have a second from Member Askew. Madam Clerk,
You can do a voice vote on this.
just do a voicemail.
Can, voice vote. Do a
Okay,
voicemail.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
No.
So we
Could I have a hand? All in favor, say aye, or raise your hand.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, and it carries.
We'll communicate it to the buyer's representative and advise you what the response is.
Brings us to new business, the budget amendment.
Yes. This request is to reallocate funds in different accounting lines in the CRA budget in the current fiscal year in order to assembly enough funds for payment of the Phase 2 engineering for the downtown revitalization. We are requesting to reallocate approximately $189,000, and these are projected revenues, funds that will be left over in this current fiscal year, coming from different items, including the building and site improvement grants and other items throughout our budget. And this would allow us to pay for the design work, the engineering work for Phase 2 for Pennsylvania Avenue in this current budget year.
Excuse me.
Councilmember Askew.
And so, I guess engineering, I'm not an engineer. So 189,000 we're looking at as the, or 223,000?
That is
Is the
correct.
cost for engineering?
Right.
That seems higher than doing New York, was it, or? Seems dramatically higher than New York.
Yes.
Is there an explanation for that? It seems like the second time around you fixed all your problems, it seems like it'd be a little easier. Of course, the engineers around me are
Maybe the
giving me
problem-
darting signs or something. I don't
Maybe
know.
the problem is they didn't charge enough on the first time.
Yeah, it could be it. too.
Lost money.
Member Matheny.
Usually it's 10% of the construction cost. So how much was the construction cost on New York? It was like $4 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
So the engineering, like by industry standard, would have been 400,000,
It wasn't that.
and it wasn't that much.
Yeah.
Mr. Trace.
So my question on this kind of blurs between the CRA and the city. The grant, the $300,000 grant we received this year from the state for downtown revitalization, I just want to make sure, like, if we don't make a decision on this tonight, does that put us in jeopardy of being able to spend the money in the time period?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I just saw a email from the project manager from the FDOT, and he said it has to be expended and the project completed by July 1st of next year.
You better get busy.
Yes.
Can we expend it on the design?
I-
Spend 200 to 300 on?
I didn't ask that question, but we can definitely, I mean, we've got a quick email response from them. They're very helpful, so we can ask that question.
What is the grant? Is it LAP funding?
I don't think so.
You're saying it's from DOT?
I thought it was DOT that, I'm seeing, hang on.
I'm surprised it's got that short of a timeline on it. I would investigate that. Usually when you get grants, it's like a 3-year, you have 3 years to do it, not like 1 year. Okay.
Do we have any other discussion, questions? To Mr. Loading?
Okay, so these monies right here are in our CRA fund right as now,
Correct.
and if we don't allocate them to, say, a project or anything, that we lose those dollars? I mean, because this is 19, right?
They just carry over.
It does carry over.
Ms. Miller just brought me an email, I guess, from the folks who are involved from HNTB indicating that the contract must be executed between July 1, 2019 and mid-June of 2020.
The contract,
What contract are they referring to?
The construction, not contract, the
So
construction.
you just have to sign the contract, you don't have to expend the dollars?
It says the contract for construction must be executed
Yeah.
between July 1,
That makes more
2019
sense.
and mid-June 2020.
They don't care if it takes 2 years after that, you just have to execute the contract.
and,
Mr. Trace?
what firm is doing the design on this, or what?
For this
see
design
that.
with Osceola
Moody.
Engineering,
Okay.
Moody's.
but I think this one is from the DOT, or whoever is providing the funding.
Mr. Loading?
My thoughts on it is, I'd like to get into phase two and get rolling, and if this helps get us into phase two, but, so there's not monies other places that was earmarked for this originally? I mean, that's why we're going to this, or, I mean, I'd like to get it, like anybody, I'd like to get our downtown done completely, and if this helps, for it.
So, but my understanding was no, and that there was all different discussions about different places that we can receive funding for this project. And so now we're in this situation where we need to find the funding. And I know that previously we used CDBG funds, but that was through the county, and my understanding the county is not really inclined to do that anymore, especially now that we're in entitlement city. So it makes it a little difficult to ask the county for funding for this project.
Mr. Trace?
I'd like to make a motion to approve budget amendment for the Phase 2 downtown revitalization.
Second.
Yeah.
We have a motion for approval of the budget amendment by Mr. Trace, a second by Askew. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And it carries. Item B.
Item B is the 2019-2020 CRA budget approval. We need the CRA board to approve the budget prior to it being finally approved by the city council. And this budget was already discussed at the city council budget workshop. And so the city council at least is aware of what's in the budget proposed for the CRA. The CRA board, however, was not apprised of the contents of the budget, and so we're bringing it to you tonight so that you can approve that budget for consideration in our final budget for the city council. And you should have the detail in your packet, which lists out, and I'm just identifying general areas. Under personal services, we have $153,672. Under operating expenditures, we have $440,749. Under capital expenditures, we have $275,000. Under grants and aid, $150,000. And then there's the contingencies and other items, which is $1.6 million for a total of $2.32 and $877,000.
We have any discussion? Mr. Loading?
On the, let's see, which part of this? Operating and expenditures, capital expenditures. Under building and site improvement grants, I'm seeing we're cutting that way back. Let's see, 2019, we had 206 earmarked for it. I know we used some of it for the Makinson building, and we did grant some grants. But, man, that's cutting that way back. I look at the CRA as helping revitalization and implementing projects, and if we're taking 2/3 of that budget away, that's a slippery slope. I mean, where are we heading with this?
So the purpose, the reason for doing that is one of the things that the city manager asked us to look at is to try and purchase property, such as we did with Mickelson Building, at least one a year. So we are now embarking on more of a property acquisition stance, because we've found that the building and site improvement grants have not been effective in achieving the desired outcome, whereby it is actually improving the downtown. And so we feel it's more important to either acquire buildings and renovate them ourselves and get them ready for market, rather than provide the site improvement grants, which we find are cosmetic, but they don't seem to, for lack of a better word, move the needle. We don't see a marked improvement in our downtown.
And where's that line item?
We haven't identified yet. That's part of the program to look for land that would be eligible for rehab. And we also will be looking at another program which we are still developing in coordination with the Planning and Zoning Division, which involves what we call pop-ups, which are sort of an incubator environment where we would look at vacant buildings in downtown and lease them ourselves, and then be able to then in turn sublease to businesses that want to start a business but don't have probably all the capital necessary to start a brick and mortar building. So we're looking at some other alternatives.
Anything else, Mr. Loading?
I just don't like it.
Any other questions? Could I entertain a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Member Askew. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Member Cooper. If there's no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
And it carries 4-1.
No,
6-1.
6-1.
I'm sorry, 6-1. I'm thinking I'm in a council meeting. Do we have a staff report?
So before we go to the staff report, yeah, actually the staff report, want to do it? Okay. I'll have Shelley Watson do the staff report.
Ms. Watson?
Good evening, Shelley Watson, St. Cloud Community Redevelopment Agency. The staff report contains the CRA financials to date and our balances within our accounts. Under the personnel account lines, we have a total of $17,681 left for the year. Under operational expenses, $254,000, and then under grants and aids, we have the $269, and that line item includes the amendments that we just approved. Also, our last building and site improvement grant has been completed, and that is the property at 1221 12th Street, the transition house. Hopefully you've had a chance to go by it. That's complete. They have submitted all of their paperwork and been approved for reimbursement, and hopefully that check will be cut this week for them. Any questions on that? No? Okay. And one last thing, the Florida Redevelopment Association conference is coming. It's October 16th through the 18th in Tampa. It's at the Hilton Tampa downtown. I included some of the documentation in your package, so you should have access to what courses are going to be available, what programs are going to be available. I just want to remind you that if you are intending on attending the conference, please make me aware of it so that I can make all of the arrangements. And I hope that we have some of you there this year.
Can I just make a comment on that?
Yes.
I wasn't able to go last year, but I went 2 years ago, and I will not be able to go this year either because I have other commitments. But that was a very enlightening conference. The mayor was also there when I was there, and they had a lot of good speakers, and it kind of gives you the knowledge of CRAs and what they're doing in other cities, and I was impressed with the conference, and I wish I could go this year, and I can't, but I would encourage a couple members of our board to please try to go and soak up some of that information and bring it back to us. I'd appreciate it myself.
It was especially helpful seeing some things that had actually been done in other cities and how effective it was. Any other?
That's all that I have.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Watson. Would anyone on the board like to make a comment? Have anything to offer? Would anyone in the public like to offer some input? If not, our next CRA meeting is Thursday, October the 3rd. And with that, we will call this meeting adjourned.
I'm not here. I was flying out that day at 3 o'clock.